Hey everybody, welcome. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're maxing out your week. I want to talk today a bit about developing a culture. You know, building a culture is one of those things that's so important to do, and a lot of people don't know how to do it, and they don't know what it means to do it, and they don't know when they have a good culture, they don't know when they have a bad culture. I just want to start with this. Look, every team environment has a culture. Every team environment has a culture. What that culture is really just depends on the vision of the leaders and the people that are running that environment. You know, every championship team first developed a winning culture and then they went out and they won. Whether it was one season or some teams have even done it decade over decade, it's all about culture. See, every team right now has a culture. What that culture is, that depends on that team. There's strong cultures and there's weak cultures and there's a whole bunch of cultures in between. And you know what I want to talk about today is the idea that a winning culture is developed around the ideas and the things that coaches and leaders implement into their teams. And there is no such thing as an accidental winning culture. You don't accidentally build a winning culture. A winning culture is written down, it's developed, it's worked on, it's a work in progress. You're constantly course correcting yourself. And, you know, for someone to say, look, that team's winning just because they have a winning culture, I mean, that's kind of a false statement. What we need to be asking ourselves is, why does that team have a winning culture? What are the things that they did 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years ago to start to develop that culture? You know, I do a lot of traveling. I meet a lot of people. I see a lot of organizations. I've been involved with business a long time now. And, you know, I see a lot of teams that just don't have that winning culture. And it's one of those things that if people spent more time developing it, they would have a better team and they'd have a better business. So I want to talk about 7 ideas on developing a winning culture. The first idea is the culture needs to be clearly defined. The culture needs to be clearly defined. Develop your brand early. Not just about income, not just about numbers, not just about how much money that you're going to be make, but why does your team exist? Why does your team exist? Why are we all here? If I'm going to be on a team and I want to be on a winning team, if I'm going to be on a winning team, I want the leader of that team to be constantly reminding me, why am I here? What are we all doing here? Right? What's the point of this gathering? What's our vision for our team? Do we want to win a Super Bowl? Like what's the outcome? Do we just want to have fun? Like, why am I here? And then what I would be doing is I would constantly be getting some teammates or some people that are involved in that environment to be speaking openly about the things that they're doing and improving on, and how it relates to the team culture. For example, you know, if you're working on a culture of people showing up a bit earlier, right? I'd go to Mike and I'd say, hey, Mike, you know what? Can you speak in the next meeting for 2 minutes? Can you talk a little bit about how you've been getting up earlier? You know, you've been doing some things that are in line with our team culture. And can you kind of talk about how they've been helping you and kind of sell the team on that idea? What that's going to do is it's going to start to define what's acceptable and what's not acceptable on the team. It's going to force us and our teammates to ask ourselves, is what I'm doing right now in line with team culture? Is what I'm doing right now in line with team culture? But if you haven't defined it and you don't have people talking about it constantly, people don't know that what they're doing is necessarily wrong. Like when people show up late. Man, you know I love when people show up late, right? Obviously, I'm kidding. That's one of my things. People showing up late, I talk about it all the time, and people say, well, you know, I don't really have a team, so me showing up late, it's not really affecting other people. Man, it is affecting other people. First of all, it's affecting you. It's affecting your integrity. See, you're building a culture, and right now your culture is one of people showing up late or sitting at the back or acting like a victim. If you can't start to develop that personal culture, you're never going to develop your team culture. And by the way, right now, you're a part of somebody else's culture. So if you have the mentality of I'm only affecting myself, that is a weak leadership comment, and there's no room on any team that I'm developing for a mindset like that, okay? These are all easy to do, right? Like show up early, sit in the front, not be a victim. They're all easy to do when we have a vision that's clearly defined for our team. But when we have no vision, we have no idea of what kind of a culture we want to build, then yeah, you're right. You're right. Showing up late to one meeting, it's not the end of the world. Nobody's going to die from it. You're not going to get fired. You're not going to get pushed off the team. None of that stuff's going to happen. But what it's doing, it's starting to create a habit. And the habit is starting to become part of your routine. And that routine is starting to shape your identity. And you're going to wake up in a year or two and you're going to have this weak culture throughout your team. And you're going to wonder what happened. Well, that happened. The second thing I want to talk about is communication. Write this down. Communication is everything. Communicate this culture to everyone. We're going to be the number one team, right? Our culture is one of developing leaders. We're the team that shows up early. We're the team that stays late. Communication is such a simple concept, but in so many organizations that I'm exposed to, this is one of the biggest holes in 99% of the organizations that I come in contact with. It's communication. You should constantly be meeting one-on-one with your teammates, constantly be engraving the culture and the identity of your team into their heads. You got to say it 100 times because it might be the 100th time that you say it that one of your teammates or somebody on your team or your environment finally understands what you're trying to build, finally understands what the team is trying to do. Building a culture is like getting an airplane off the ground. Most of the fuel that you're going to burn is getting that sucker off the ground. And that's like building a culture. You know, it's super important that you understand you got to stay on it and it's going to take some time. But if you stick with it and you have that vision for it and you communicate it all the time, it's going to start to move. Number 3, create structure. Create structure. Structure creates certainty. And people want to be around people that create certainty in their lives. See, these are uncertain times. People are losing their job. People's relationships are on the rocks. People's financial situation on the rocks. People seem to be more stressed out than ever for numerous things. People want certainty. And as a leader, if you start to create structure in your environment, you tell your team where they should be and when. What this does is it tells them that their leader is thinking ahead, that somebody has prepared. We have a vision. We're communicating things to our team. And it just lowers the anxiety level of the team. That's what structure does. It's super important to create structure in your culture, especially when you're trying to build a culture, because it builds these walls and it kind of contains things. And that's what you want. You want to create this highway of culture and communication, and that's what the structure does. It kind of holds everything in. Number 4 is accountability. As a group and as individuals, we need accountability if we want to create a culture. We need to be accountable to the culture that we say that we want to create. People that don't want to be in line with your culture, they're not a good fit for your team. Stop trying to force a round peg into a square hole. Yes, some people just need time. So be patient with people. Don't give up on people. But at the end of the day, if people aren't a fit for what you're trying to build, then they're not a fit for what you're trying to build. If you want to build a team that has the utmost integrity and you recruit somebody to your team or your company that doesn't have integrity, I mean, you can wait around for 6-7 years for that person to kind of change their integrity, or, you know, you could just have that conversation with them right up front. You know what, Tim, our team is one that holds, you know, our values and we hold high levels of integrity is the utmost importance to us. And at the end of the day, I mean, if integrity is not important to you, then you know what? Maybe this business isn't for you. But it's super important that there's some accountability with you, with me, with the team towards this culture. And if people aren't talking about it, if people aren't holding each other accountable, then at the end of the day, the culture is going to fall apart. So again, number 1 is you want to define that culture. It needs to be clear. And number 2, it needs to be communicated. Number 3, there's some structure around that culture. Number 4, there needs to be accountability around it. And number 5, this is one of my favorite. You need to get your team involved. You need to get your team involved. Give them opportunity to speak up. Give people on your team an opportunity to speak about the culture. Share their experiences with the team relating to the core value. And I kind of touched on this in the beginning. Again, you know, get people up for a couple minutes. Talk about how, you know what, getting up 10 minutes earlier helped, or writing down their affirmations in the morning have helped, or hiring a coach or getting some mentorship has helped, or working on, belief. All things that you believe are important in the culture of your team, or somebody that's openly working on communication, maybe both in their business and at home. And what that does is when you get people speaking about it, when you get people stepping up and getting involved, they start coaching each other. They start building relationships within your team around the culture that you set forth as a leader. And imagine how powerful that becomes. I mean, that can start to take on a life of its own. Extremely powerful stuff. Number 6, de-clutter. De-clutter. I call this de-clutter and fresh coat of paint. De-clutter and fresh coat of paint. Sometimes it helps to change our physical surroundings. For example, when I'm trying to make a huge shift in my business, you know what I do? I come into my office. I take down my old posters. I reorganize my desk. I move some things around. I redo my board. And people walk in and they just feel like things are different, right? Paint one wall a different color. Not in my office, but go and find an office that's yours and go paint a wall a different color. Do something that when people walk in, they notice the physical surroundings are different and they feel the emotion is different. They're getting hit at different angles and all of a sudden they're like, wow, they're really serious about growing the culture of this team. What it does is it signals the new era. It signals the new era. You ever walk into someone's house or apartment or even their office and everything's kind of changed around? What do you say? You're like, whoa, wow, you really moved some things around. What's going on? Let me tell you what's going on. Right? It's spring cleaning time. I'm decluttering. It's a fresh start. I just got over a bad relationship. I just started a new business. I went and got all new binders. Sometimes you just got to get rid of everything that you have that's not serving you. You need to bring only things back in that are serving you. You might need to freshen up the coat of paint. You might need a new picture on the wall. It seems so silly. You might even need to have a team meeting outside the office, somewhere new, maybe at your house, maybe at a restaurant. Change up the surroundings just a little bit. Make a small tweak, and it just starts to change not only the way people perceive your message, but also the way they receive it. It's super important. Number 7, my final point, stay on it. Stay on it. It's going to take some time. I had a really, really powerful conversation with one of my mentors in life, Raja Dhaliwal, a good friend of mine, about 3 years ago. And we were talking about making a huge cultural shift in my team. And he said, you know what, Steve? This cultural shift is going to take you 3 full years. He says, and you know what? In the beginning, nobody's going to be on board. Everybody's going to think it's different. Everyone's going to think it's weird. There's going to be way more questions and answers. You're going to be calling me 100 times. But you know what? 6 months in, you'll have one person on board. A year in, you'll have a few more. 2 years in, a few more. He says 3 years into this, he says, in this culture starts to change the way you want, your entire life is going to change. I got to tell you something. We are 32 months in to this 36-month game plan that I put forth. And my business year over year, in the category that I measure to be the most important, we're up 100% year over year. 100% year over year in the category that I measure as the most important. Why is that? Because almost 3 years ago, we made a decision to change the culture, and we stuck with it, and we were patient, and we never got bored of saying the same thing to new people. Man, if your people are bored of the fundamentals, you got to get new people. You got to get new people. It's about saying the same thing to new people. Why should you ever stop talking about integrity? Why should you ever stop talking about showing up early and staying late and competing and being number one and being the best trained team and being the most tight-knit team? Why should you ever get tired of talking about those things? Every time you bring somebody new in, their only understanding of what you're trying to create is what you're going to tell them and the culture that they're picking up on. And if there's no culture to pick up on, and if you're not constantly repeating the same things day in, day out, how do people know what they're a part of? And how do they know where they can contribute? And how do they know where they fit in? And how do they know even where the team plans on going? And what you end up building is this fragmented team with no energy, no momentum, no structure, no walls, no communication, no accountability. I'm going to challenge you. Be relentless. was staying on your message. And stay on your message long enough for your business or your life to compound. And once it starts to compound, like our business is just about to compound, it's just about to feel a doubling effect of what we started talking about 36 months ago. And once it starts to double once, the second doubling period happens way quicker. So I'm just going to close on this. Culture is one of those things that it's hard to define. You can't taste it, you can't feel it necessarily to touch, but it's almost like an energy, and it's just that. It is a feeling that you get when you walk into a room, whether it's a professional organization, whether it's a household, whether it's a church, you feel the culture. And the culture is either something that's going to keep you coming back, or it's going to kind of push you away, and you're going to kind of decide, you know what, this culture just isn't for me. It's very important you have a culture for your business. Make sure it's clearly defined before you set out on your journey. Don't make the mistake I did. Don't start to define your culture 5, 6, 7 years into your business. Save yourself that 5, 6 years. Get on track right now so that the next teammate you bring on board has a perfect idea of exactly what you stand for, what this team is all about, and where you're going as an organization. So I appreciate you guys. We'll see you soon.